Welcome back, viewers, to Faith and Discipline podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Imran Zamir. He is pediatric endocrinologist in the UK. Welcome, Dr. Imran Zamir, to Faith and Discipline podcast.
Thank you for inviting me to talk to you today.
My first question is, what is obesity and why do you think it's a problem?
So obesity is defined mostly as overweight, but there are further categories to this. Simple obesity means somebody's weight is excess to compared to the general population, and it is defined by different parameters such as weight for height, and waist ratio. So it is defined according to the population where we live, and it can be further defined as just overweight, obese, and morbidly obese. So overweight means weight is above the range for that age. Then obese means is further higher, which is defined in adults the BMI, but in children you can't define according to the BMI, and it will be defined according to the centiles. Then morbidly obese means that it is causing some complications.
Right. Okay. So what those complications can be?
There are many complications related to obesity, and this is one of the rapidly prevailing, obviously, all over the world. It's a global epidemic, and most of the health issues currently we are facing in the world, and the biggest health budget spent not only in the developed countries but also required to be dedicated to the developing countries is related to obesity or obesity related complications. The few commonly known one is like diabetes, and same in adults. You see increased risk of heart conditions, especially hypertension. It can also cause cataracts. There are a few other rare conditions which can also be related to obesity, including even the risk of few cancers are also linked to the being overweight.
How big is the problem in this country?
While we talking about country where we're living in at the moment in UK, I can give you a simple idea that according to the Office for National Statistics, the obesity numbers have tripled since 1990. So this roughly over the last 30 years, the obesity number in children have gone 3 times in that short period. And this is based on a very robust data which they have obtained, especially from a children measurement program where they are measuring children at the school entry level, so around 4 years of age, and then again when they finish primary school around 10 to 11 years of age.
Why this is an increasing problem in the children?
It is multifactorial. When we talk about obesity, there are 3 factors which are important. One is a genetic predisposition. That means we already born with our genes which we inherit from our parents, and these predispose us to few conditions, and we know that few populations such as Asians and African people are slightly higher risk of having obesity and obesity related complications. Secondly is diet, and we know that over time our diet is changing and we are eating a lot more processed food. And the third is lifestyle, which means either somebody has a disability or any other health condition which decreases their ability to do the exercise. The other thing is because of the modern lifestyle, we are spending less and less time on physical activity, which includes spending more time on screen.
What parents can do to stop their children from becoming overweight?
It is a challenging question because in the current climate, children like to do things like their peers, and if a parent is asking them to do things differently, they sometimes feel that why they are treated differently, and there's no easy answer to this. But I think it needs to changing the mindset, and it requires some measures which need to be taken at national and probably at global level, including the involvement of the United Nations, and WHO is very high on their priority list. Things which we can do, as already mentioned, trying to decrease the screen time, and what thing works probably is if it's a whole family approach, and you're not only asking children not to do this. We as adults also need to do the similar things and spend more time on physical activity, and family activities probably will be one way forward. Second thing is regarding our diet. I normally, when I speak to the families, I normally say that children don't go and buy and do shopping on their own. So if we change our attitude and we also start eating healthy, which means eating more raw vegetables and raw food rather than processed food, that will help to some extent. And then genetic factors, again, not in our hand, but environmental factors do interplay with them. And it's not alone that genetic factors to blame for all these problems.
Statistically, if you look at the numbers, which is the bigger group in overweight and obesity? Is it the younger children or is it the adults?
When children become overweight at a very young age, then it is more likely that they could have any underlying reason for this. There are some genetic syndromes which can also cause obesity, and most of those conditions children start putting on weight in a very young age. And when I say very young age, that means below 4 years of age. So when children have a weight gain, excessive weight gain, that I mean not a little bit chubby children from 1 year, 2 years, or up to 4 years of age, then they are more likely that they need investigations and they might have underlying cause. There are those conditions are extremely rare, so in most of the conditions we will not find any underlying reason. But when they start gaining weight a bit later age, in a primary school or secondary school, then there's less common that there will be underlying reason, and we call it simple or nutritional obesity. So that means it's more because of the excessive calorie intake.
As everyone is aware, the biggest culprits are, processed food and inactive lifestyle. So in your opinion, which is the bigger player? Is it the food which is causing this obesity pandemic, or is it the inactive lifestyle?
It's difficult to say one is bigger than the other, because both are equally important, and at government level they are trying different measures. You have recently heard about UK government applying sugar tax. So that's one way of trying to control the sugar intake in our diet. But at the same time, they are also improving the facilities for the sports, and also educating different programs such as park run and other provisions for the children in education facilities to have more sports and activities. So I think it's a combination of both that is required, rather than only focusing on one area.
As we know, human brain is not fully developed at early age. So what can children do if the food is in their reach and especially tastes good as well? How to keep a balance?
It is definitely not easy, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, that if you stop your children and all other children are eating same type of food, then they will feel that their parents are excessively harsh to them. So there's not an easy fix, but as I said, if there's a whole family approach, and one little change helps to obviously keep the message going, and not only keep to your family, to involve your friends and extended relatives, then slowly I think the mind will change. And media plays a bigger role as well. And at the moment, I think it's an era of the social media, so it's not only the electronic media, but social media is where I think we need to think about what adverts go, especially during the daytime when the children are watching telly. Those things will help.
So what are the serious conditions that are linked to obesity?
As mentioned, I think the biggest is diabetes, and I'm a pediatrician, so I can give you simply an example that in UK before 2000 there was not a single reported case of type 2 diabetes in children. The most recent audit, because we do children's diabetes audit year-on-year basis, and there are 1,200 children in UK with type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is not same as type 1 diabetes, which is more common in children, or is not same as type 2 diabetes in adults. So it is a lot more severe and aggressive illness, and it causes early death, and also causes heart complications and different other complications. So it is a very rapidly progressive disease.
That's very sad to know. Do you reckon are there any chemicals responsible for this?
So far, there have been different population-wide studies, but it has not been proven that there's any cause and effect link with any chemicals.
You mentioned earlier in our speech the difference between being overweight, obese, and morbidly obese. So, what is the main difference between the obesity and morbidly obese? Where is that fine line?
I was saying that some people with obesity are higher risk of developing complications. I was recently reading an article and they were saying that for different things we have our different thresholds and some people obviously eat maybe similar amount to the other people and they don't put on as much weight. But it's not the only the weight which matters. When we put on weight, there's the same weight around our internal organs, especially around heart, liver, and kidneys and brain. So brain has got extra fat, so that's not that much affected by obesity itself. But other organs, when there's excessive fat, especially in children, it affects the growth of those organs. So children with obesity their organs do not mature to the full potential, and that obviously makes them at higher risk of developing complications. One of the complications which we see a lot in children is sleep apnea. Because of the excessive obesity, makes them high risk of having obviously relatively not fully developed lungs or restrictive lungs. So it makes them obviously breathing less effective, and they also develop sleep apnea. Already mentioned about diabetes. There's also risk of developing kidney problems, and that can also lead to early high blood pressure, which is called hypertension. And all this in combination making you at high risk of having cardiac problems and heart attacks.
That's a long list of problems that, it's quite sad. So if unfortunately someone is morbidly obese, what are the treatment options for them, and are they safe?
That is one area where the huge number of studies are ongoing, and you can imagine, because there's a lot of interest from the pharmaceutical industry in this, because whoever is going to crack this code and develop a magic pill, which is probably not going to happen very soon or very likely, then I think they will be making a lot of money. But at the moment there are medications possible, but unfortunately the medication is not a solution. As we said, it needs working on multiple facets. It involves exercise, it involves dietary changes, and it involves a bit of a psychology or counseling as well, because sometimes these things are going on for a while, and it has obviously affects what we call as a habit eating. And
so it's a complete lifestyle.
Yes, yeah. But one thing which has shown the best results is the surgery. But as you can imagine, surgery is irreversible and it will have its own complication. But surgery is one thing where morbidly obese have benefited the most, and the risk of complications have reversed.
I want to talk about a misconception. Some people believe we can feed anything to the children because this is the right age to develop, and even fatty or sugary food is okay for them, is not going to cause any problems. And I would also like to give reference of some communities in which they believe a person who is overweight is considered healthy, and if the person who is lean is considered as weak and not that strong. So what do you say on that?
That's a very interesting question, and I definitely agree with you and I come across that very often, that because society is generally getting bigger and bigger. And I can give you one example, that in pediatrics we use growth charts, and our growth charts obviously have some limitations, and they are based on data from 20-30 years ago, and a lot of children, when you plot on these growth charts, they are way off on the growth chart. So when we're comparing with the children 30-40 years ago, and it's very rare that parents consider their children overweight when they are plotting very high on the growth charts. And if a child is normal weight, majority of the parents think that the child is underweight because they are comparing with the general trend in the society. Similarly, there's some role from the industry to play because I've seen especially some clothes manufacturers have changed their clothing sizes, and they obviously, one question which used to work, that how do you feel about your child's clothes size, and now they say, yeah, it's wearing the same age as he is, but he or she is, and actually it's because the manufacturer has changed the clothes size, and from some other country, same clothes size will not fit to that child. So it's definitely a misconception that children can feed any food and obesity will be less risky to them. And I've given you already example that when they are not fully developed body and their organs are still developing, at that time actually they are high risk. And there are many studies, longitudinal studies, which means that they have done the data collection from same person over many years, from children to adult, that the childhood obesity, even if you reverse it, effects will not go away. While in adults, if you reverse the overweight, then your risk or complications will also reverse. So sometimes the childhood obesity risk will not go away. So that means it's worse than having adult obesity.
There is an observation that some of the parents are feeding their children unhealthy food indirectly. Indirectly, in a sense, is like they are making unhealthy food readily available in their own house, or they are taking them to like visit so-called dessert shops or dessert stores. What happens is they want to feed their own cravings because they feel like eating something unhealthy, and they take the kids with them. What do you say to those parents? What is your message?
I can just say that think twice. Obviously, what you are going to feed the children, that's going to affect their future health. We recently have seen that the trend has that dessert shops have mushroomed around us, and there is a trend that people have a meal in one restaurant and after that they go out and have dessert in a different shop, and that should be discouraged. And as I said, government has tried to some extent by imposing sugar tax, but it has made some difference. We have seen in supermarket shopping, but the effect has not reciprocated in the food industry, in the sense that the restaurants I think has not affected that much, because people probably are going on the weekends for these, and they think one-off spending is okay on these things. But desserts and those things in long run are definitely increasing the risk of all those complications which we have already mentioned.
So what are your recommendations overall to stay fit, healthy, and be lean and not be overweight? What is your recommendation?
There are some national recommendations already there, so I don't need to add to those. But we also need to remember that those are minimum recommendation for healthy children during day-to-day life. So if your child is overweight, you will have to do something more than that to reverse the extra weight they have put on. So don't expect that if you do the same activity which is recommended for somebody with a normal weight, that your child is going to change the weight. But on the other hand, one advantage children have, they are in the growth phase, so that means they're still gaining height. So in that case, if they maintain their same weight, and that's what in most of our weight programs we advocate, is that they need to probably keep the same weight for next 3-4 years or 5 years, and their BMI will come down, body shape will also change, because they are not going to put on weight, but they will gain height. So that's one thing the parents can look forward to, that rather than aiming for a weight loss, which will be required in a fully grown adult, that children can afford to keep the same weight if they are still growing.
That's good to know. I know there's a lot of advice: be active, eat healthy, and stay away from unhealthy, and a lot of other things. But if as a human it's not easy to follow everything and be very strict in our lifestyle, so if someone asks like an easy option, give us just one key point just to follow and then we'll stay fit, what would you say? Just change one thing.
I think in the current era, the best thing is about activity levels, that we need to aim for activity levels to minimum standard. And for children, the recommendation is at least 1 hour of physical activity per day. And that 1 hour should be either continuous 1 hour, or it can be half an hour twice a day. And that we should aim to spend that much time on physical activity with our children on a daily basis. And secondly, I think you said one thing, but that is linked to this, is that we need to we can aim to achieve this by cutting down or decreasing our screen time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Imran Zamir, for attending us today on our show. We will invite you in future to talk on other topics as well. It's been very, very useful. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers. This is end of our talk today. If you have any questions, you can post a question and we will try to answer with the help of our specialists. Thanks for watching.